Hi. Hello. Hi. So I'm just waiting for Brett. We are going to try this again. I'm super nervous just because we are giving this a go a second time. Let me see when Brett gets on here. But thank you guys for joining me. We're going to talk about white privilege again and maybe touch a little bit on systemic poverty, which was Gray's topic this week. So we're very excited, but mostly we just want to, try to get through a conversation without screwing up or losing each other. Brett, if you're there, can you just pop a comment on the bottom, please? How are you guys doing? How's your Friday? This is so weird. I feel like normally I'm here at a different time of day. Hold on. Why did the comments stop? Brett? Where are you? So I just to give you guys a heads up on what's coming up for the next couple weeks. So we will have, Jaina is doing a video next week. And followed by Jay, and then Lachlan, and then Danielle, and then we've got some new people coming in. So I'm very excited to share what's coming up with you guys. I imagine Brett's trying to figure out. He borrowed someone's phone, so that's how deep in we are here, trying to figure out what we're doing. How are you guys doing? How are you guys faring? Are you breathing through this traumatic period of time? I hope that all of your countries are handling this pandemic better than mine, depending on where you guys are. I'll just tell you guys what I've been doing. I've just been sitting around cooking a lot, exercising because I spent the first 3 months eating and drinking too much. So I feel much better, now than I did a couple weeks ago. But, I just saw someone who's listening to Groundhog Day on repeat. Yes, Brett, I am on. Oh my God. Oh yeah, I heard Brazil is having a hard time too. Wonder what that's about. And I'm having a beer, so I can just chill out and talk with friends about some stressful but reasonable shit. Okay, hold on. Okay, someone's been writing Serera fan fiction. Great. Sorry guys. 1 second. I'm trying to coordinate with Brett. Already. Start watching mine. Okay. I got a little question from someone. How did you start musical theater to television acting? I don't know. I was started as a singer, and I got really into like, I was in a choir when I was young, like 12, 13, and then I sort of graduated into doing musicals at school. And then, oh, there he is. Sorry. Okay. I'll finish what. Hello. Waiting. Hello.
Hello.
Is this happening? Nice glasses, dude.
Oh, thanks. They're new ones. My contact lenses were giving me the pip, as my grandmother would say. That's the polite way. My grandmother would say they're giving me the pip. So that's what was happening. So I whacked the new specs on. Plus, 10% smarter. So I'm less likely to say something.
You look smarter.
Yeah, look, I need all the help I can get. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was just in the middle of saying, someone asked how I got from theater into TV, and I was just saying that I was really into theater, and then I started doing musicals, and I went to college for that, and then I started auditioning a lot, and then I got a job on TV, which was great.
Yeah, she's also really good at it, so that helps.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a gentleman.
Well, it's no mistake. It's no mistake,
Sometimes we
Sometimes
feel
you
differently, though, don't we?
Well,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for everyone joining in last week and putting up with our glitches. Also, thank you to my neighbour for lending me his phone. I'm on my neighbour's phone because I smashed my phone. So, and literally, like, people are really funny about their phones. I hit him up, hit a few people up, and they were like, "Ooh, that doesn't sound good." And I'm like, "Cool, no worries." So I had to go to my neighbour, and then, so we're good. It's working.
That's awesome. How long do you have it for? What else are you going to do with this phone?
Go swimming with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Make some international calls to Australia.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought that what we could do as an attempt to sort of revisit what we were struggling to get through last week was just to sort of touch on some of the things that we talked about. And we covered kind of a lot of ground, but it's hard to remember some of it because we were jumping around a lot. But we sort of started with the discussion of why, I think we sort of started with the discussion of sort of why people get so wrapped, like the difficulty to just acknowledge that white privilege exists. Yeah,
the discomfort in the words white privilege.
Yeah.
The discomfort in being seen as a race rather than just normal. The word white suddenly, and also the idea that acknowledging white privilege might mean that you're a racist, which it doesn't, of course, mean you're a racist. It just means acknowledging these systems that are, rife throughout society, but some that are so obvious and a result of conscious choices made a long time ago, also today, but obviously severe, overt, obvious ones about, accumulating wealth and also not vote or everything. I mean, I was just reading about, I'm trying not to jump off subject, but there was a great article in the paper today in the New York Times about what's happening in Oregon. And I didn't know that Oregon had such a history of white supremacy. I kind of, it's just not knowing enough about America, but yeah, this predominantly white, and they had a law at one point that was any black person found in the state was whipped. So, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, just not. I mean, at least they could have, they didn't even bother to make up. He was looking at the wrong way, or she bumped into a white, it was not bang black. So, I mean, that's just these overt things. But then they've trickled down, and these decisions are still made. So, yeah, the idea that these systems are in place and recognizing them doesn't make you racist.
No.
And also it doesn't mean that you haven't struggled, that white people haven't had their own struggles, and that you're not, as we said last week, you're not handed the keys to the kingdom just because you're white. No one's saying that. But it's a separate thing, your life struggle to these other systems that are in place.
Yeah. But what's interesting? I was just listening to a podcast that I've mentioned a couple times, but it's Seen on Radio. They had a series, I think it was their season 2, was called Seeing White. And I was just listening to an episode because before last week, I was actually really interested, and I was sort of trying to play devil's advocate with myself, because I was like, what is a common argument when you say that, you know, white privilege exists, and if you're white, you benefit from white privilege? And
Right.
no. Actually, now there are so many people, bizarrely, who actually believe that there is more privilege at this point to be a person of color or a woman than it is than to be a white man. And so I was sort of looking, okay, with affirmative action, for example, which is largely brought up as like, well, this is an example of how people of color and women benefit from just simply because of their skin color or gender, not because
Right.
of their merit or how hard they work or
Right.
whatever, but it's simply they're getting opportunities that are excluded, where white people or men are excluded from just because they're black or brown or a woman. And so I was looking up arguments sort of against affirmative action and how that plays in with white privilege. And one of the things that came up that was so fascinating and of course makes total sense is that actually white people have been the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action in our nation's history.
Right.
Primarily because so many of the sort of initiatives and government projects that were built to balance things out were available only to white people. So we talked
Right.
a little bit last week about home loans, right?
Right.
Or they usually people talk about the GI Bill, right?
The GI Bill.
Where
Yeah.
you come back from war and the government says, okay, we're going to send you to school, but we can only send you to school. They occasionally, I think it was available to some black men, but you could only, schools were still segregated at that time, so you could only really go to an HBCU, a historically black college or university. And
Right.
their programs were stretched so thin and were, of course, underfunded. So
Right.
they were not actually able to give people the education that they wanted. And then when they tried to apply to white schools, they couldn't get in. And it sounds,
Right.
I mean, that's how it was for a really long time, but it's so weird to say white schools when you're talking about the
Right.
majority of universities in this country. But yeah, and so when people bring up that argument, for example, it's largely decimated by the reality of the situation, which is when you're
Right.
presented with the number of opportunities that people were given, not because of their merit, but because they were white, because they were citizens, because they were white. You know, you realize that
Yeah.
there were all these loopholes that were put in place over and over and over again as people were creating these laws, that like made sure that white people, that white supremacy continued to be upheld in this country. So it's and that still happens. So it's
Of course, and it's a nanosecond ago. It's a second ago. So the idea that that's somehow kind of, we're all just pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps now, and it's an even playing field. The head start that white people had from those structures that were put in place is just off the chain economically. The accumulation of wealth, and you know, after that GI Bill, I mean, I think, you know, you couldn't get a loan as a black. You couldn't get a loan.
Mm-hmm.
So and there was zoning areas, and if you were even lived near black people, the difficulty in getting a loan was increased. And now, and even still with the, you know, the financial crisis, those loans with those high interest rate loans that everything collapsed. It was predominantly minorities that were on those massively high, you know, and so that's just, you know, a decade ago, whatever it was. So it's still, it's a bizarre thing. And I was thinking kind of, it's a little bit of a lateral thought, but it seems like more and more people are getting on board with the idea that there's a global warming, right? And more people are going, okay, we need to listen to the scientists and the facts on this. And that's becoming, you know, increasingly easier for people to stop listening to people who bring snowballs into Congress as a way of proving that, you know, global warming doesn't exist. But we're listening to the scientists, and I see this as the same thing. If you can't empathize and put yourself in that position, then at least look at the statistics.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very, very blatantly clear, you know, the amount of, I mean, just to state the obvious, you know, the amount of black people that get killed by police, the statistics the incarceration rates for the same crimes, the lengths of incarceration, the home loans, it's, so, it is just this thing of, why are we doing this? We're just trying to keep a conversation going and also hopefully make some people who aren't aware. And, I was talking to a mate back home who grew up in a very affluent white neighborhood, and he's always been, a little, he's had the blinkers on, let's just say. Mm-hmm. And he's talking differently. I was shocked just the other day. I was talking to him, and he's the loveliest guy in the world. Like, he really is, but he just hasn't had that ability, that upbringing, and his education is shifting his language. And it's like, this is great. Like, this is actually working. And the important thing as well, the fact that they've had the most protests in the last every day for 50 days or whatever it is, and it's predominantly white. And I know there's other factors playing into it with the feds and all that stuff there, the unnamed, secret bloody feds that are taking people away. But
isn't it nice?
It is kind of working, and I read this interesting thing actually. I'm going to read it for you because it gets to a point where you go, what do you do, right? This is in this I've tried to put this in the last post on tolerance.org, but it says. I bet this has gone up in recent times because this was written a few years ago, but it says only 46% of white people say that they benefit a great deal or a fair amount from advantages that society does not offer to black people. But conscious choices were and are made to uphold these privileges. And this goes beyond loan officers and lawmakers. And this is the bit that's interesting. Multiple surveys have shown that many white people support the idea of racial equality, but are less supportive of policies that could make it more possible, such as reparations, affirmative action, or law enforcement reform. Mm-hmm. And that's true, hearing that now, because law enforcement reform, it sounds like, oh, we're not going to have police, it gets kind of grossly generalized, especially at the moment with these political kind of, advertising cliches that get thrown out. So it's just like this grossly generalized idea. Yeah. But of course, it's not about getting rid of the police, but that's a stumbling block, how do you kind of go with the,
Yeah, it's so interesting. That was something that a woman, so the podcast series that I was talking about is sort of framed around basically a course that was offered from the Racial Equity Institute. And so business owners and people would are like paying to take this course where, I think a sociologist, I imagine, or a historian, comes in and sort of like gives them a long spiel, and they participate in it's like diversity training essentially, and like how to understand how racism works in our country and how it's like continued to sort of sow differences between people for hundreds of years. And one of the women who was taking this course, a white woman who's married to a black man, has black kids, was going to her first day, I think, and she was like, I don't know what to expect. What I'm worried about is I don't want to stop being proud of my family and of myself. I don't want to be ashamed of being white. I don't want to, leave here feeling like shit.
Right.
Essentially.
Right.
So, and at the end, she comes back and does her little voice recording, and she talks about how difficult it is, and in fact how difficult it was for her after that to feel like, can I be proud of my family? Did we earn anything? And it's of course you did. Yes, your parents worked hard, but when we look back at our history, it's exactly what you just said. I think it's that people didn't take that step and vote. They didn't follow up their personal moral beliefs or what they learned from reading the Bible or what they learned from, their families or, yes, all men are created equal. I believe that in my heart. Right. You have to actually support policy changes that reinforce that, because otherwise those sorts of laws, like you can just whip any black person you find on the street, can stay in the law books because we just forgot to overturn them, They make a joke about that, I think, on Parks and Recreation, like about how there are so many laws in these little towns that just people don't really follow them anymore, but technically they're still legal,
oh wow.
And I think that really happens. I mean, maybe not in this particular case, but it's I think that that's such a complicated question, you know, and then what do you do now? And there's another article that I read, it was years ago, actually, after the murder of Nia Wilson in Oakland. And someone was actually writing an article about Anne Hathaway doing a post, like a public post in support of basically acknowledging white privilege and saying the onus is on white people to take a step forward and to step up. And how shocking that was. I mean, it's kind of interesting at this particular moment when so many public figures are coming forward to make statements. And I'm so glad that we get to be among those voices, you know? But like the way this writer sort of broke it down, and it was a Black writer writing about reading this thing that Anne Hathaway posted and this, you know, about this Black woman who was killed. And she says, basically spend it. You didn't earn your white privilege, so why can't you spend it? Spend it in support of other people. Like, step up to like, you didn't do anything to get it, right? You were born white, lucky you, I guess. So what do you have to lose from spending that privilege and speaking out in support of minorities, basically?
Right. It seems so innocuous, doesn't it? And also conversely, you know, you're born into this advantage, and then minorities didn't do anything to deserve the disadvantage.
Sure.
That, you know, so it's this weird thing. You know, it's just you got lucky, and you like you know, you've got this choice. We were talking about last week. We get to have a choice as to whether or not we want to participate, and minorities don't. It's just a constant fight and push for equality and freedom. And when we get the luxury of this choice of being involved or not, and also there's, you know, there is the thing of kind of like indifference, but there's also, I suppose, and what's happening now, and again, I just was thinking that article in the New York Times today, but of knowing that you're allowed to participate. Like, you know, when I first did my talk, I was like, should I be listening or should I be, you know, when you know, you guys invited me to be included in the conversation, and so it's knowing that that you know, you absolutely can be a part of it, because ultimately, what's the alternative? Right. You know, what's the alternative? There isn't one. You've just got to, you know, and ultimately, what side of history do you want to be on? There's a clear progression here. I mean, there's some serious attempts to stop progression at the moment, isn't there? Like, there's some pretty,
absolutely.
There's some clear kind of deliberate. I mean, the stuff that's coming out of that's been online lately. I mean, on TV. I mean, it's just incredible. But yeah, it's knowing that you can step in and be a part of the conversation and listen and contribute. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that it's, I mean, that was something that I was frankly nervous about, asking people to participate, because I didn't want people to be worried that they weren't going to be welcome sort of at the table to have this conversation. And in fact, I personally am of the belief, of course, you need to do your research. You need to, you know, that's why we sort of encouraged everyone to be like, I'm not an expert. I'm learning, and we're all learning. I'm learning, like, you know, but that. I
am an expert now, by the way. Yeah. Sorry.
Glasses on. That's what.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't want anybody to come under fire for being like, well, I just want to participate in the conversation, and we're here to listen too, which is why I think it would be great to like see if people have any comments or questions or that they've learned recently or that they've recognized in themselves. But like, I wanted to make sure people knew that it was more important to say something than to not say anything at all.
Right. Absolutely.
And
the marches have been reflective of that this time, haven't they, as well?
Yeah.
Like all over the planet, the marches in Australia as well. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
So it definitely feels different, doesn't it, this time?
Yes, it does. And it's inspiring so many different pockets of minority culture to come forward and say, we need to be here too. And you need to see us. That, you know, Black trans lives matter is like incredibly important, especially and also within the Black community, to continue acknowledging that, like, if we are here fighting
for civil rights for Black people, we are fighting for all Black people. You know, we are fighting for, we cannot start dividing lines and like splitting ourselves into groups, because we never get anywhere.
Oh God, no, absolutely. And that's the thing about this. We were talking about this last week a little bit, just from what I've been reading about how the civil rights movement really inspired the women's rights movement and all the other movements. And you know, it's kind of been the leader in, you know, equal rights from the start. There was a great interview last night on Stephen Colbert with Ava DuVernay as well. It's online. You can get on YouTube. Yeah, it was great. It's a, you know, it's a 10-minute thing, and but it's fantastic. She's amazing.
She is.
And so yeah, it's on YouTube if people want to check it out. Also, she mentioned that 13th is actually on YouTube for free. You don't have to, if you got Netflix, you can watch the whole movie on YouTube. Yeah. So that's really
news.
Cool.
So you guys should definitely. I know Brett highly recommended it. I highly recommend it. It's an incredible movie. It's very sad, at times hard to watch, but also it's so illuminating. I think it also finds a really wonderful way to celebrate the triumphs. You know,
ultimately,
so much when we talk about racism. Essentially, we focus so much on the terrible parts, and they
the negative,
and they need to be exposed. But I've also been one of these people who's sitting here going, Black joy matters. You know, like it's good to see all versions of the Black experience, not just the trauma.
Right.
But yeah, watch 13th. It's incredible, and I'm so glad to know that it can be found on YouTube.
I just discovered that myself. Also, Gray's chat on systemic poverty was great too. If you haven't seen that, check it out. He was great.
Yeah, I think it's so. I thought it was really interesting what he was talking about. It, you know, how our action. You know, it's not surprising, I think, to anybody who believes in psychiatry, I guess, and like emotional and psychological medicine.
Right.
But that your brain chemistry actually starts to change.
Right.
You know, that there is that it's really hard when you're basically generational trauma.
100%. 100%. Yep. And just that this is the norm, and the inability to look outside that box. And, you know, it's just a kind of like a matrix. You're stuck in that. This is your lot. You know, and no ability to get out of that. And like you said, it's generational. I mean, there are books on this stuff, the neuroplasticity around it and how to break that cycle. I've never read any of them, but apparently they're really good. But yeah, it's there's no question that's a real thing. It is really difficult to change that.
Yeah. They were talking in this, again, I keep bringing it up, but I was just listening to it, so it's fresh in my mind. But in this podcast about how the wealth gap is obviously a big issue, but also the way money is passed in families, in white families, traditionally and for a long time, it's been from parent to child, from parent to adult child. And in Black families, it typically has been adult child to parent as they get older. And so there's no way to pass down your wealth, because you have to take care of your parents, because for a long time, Social Security didn't apply to Black people. You couldn't, because indentured servants and agriculture workers didn't qualify for Social Security. So in, you know, the 30s, 40s, 50s, most of those people were African American. So there was no opportunity to like get assistance. So your children had to take care of you when you got older, as opposed to the government giving a hand. So it's amazing how these knots are so like deliberate. I think, you know, like,
of course,
intense, that you can't untie them.
Right. And they're the big ones that again, it just not that long ago, the really big ones that were deliberate, conscious actions to restrict and oppress and not accumulate wealth. I mean, they're really strong ones. And the idea that they haven't, that the effects of that are not, you know, are still rippling through today is crazy. Like, it's just, it's still in place. But then you've got all those other ones we talked about last week, the day-to-day stuff, the unconscious stuff, the car stuff we talked, driving in the car, the arrests, the absence of suspicion, and was it Christian Cooper, Amy Cooper, the thing. I mean, these are those little ones you take for granted, but those economic ones and I mean, these are strong, deliberate actions that still affect everyone today.
Yeah. So I want to just look at what some of the comments are doing. It's so hard. They're so distracting at the bottom of the screen. It's hard to not read them. But yeah, someone mentioned how there's it's frustrating when people tie laziness with poverty.
Right.
And how destructive the assumptions that are made and what we've been taught about sort of stereotypes of poor people.
Right.
And, I just saw something the other day. Oh, my friend Polika, who I did a live with a couple weeks ago, years ago. Oh my God, it feels like years. A couple weeks ago, and it was someone's tweet and said something like, "What's trashy when you're poor, but classy when you're rich?" And the answer was immigration.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like,
that's funny.
Oh my God.
That's so true.
Oh
my God, that's so
her parents
true.
are immigrants, and so she was like,
and that's absolutely true, because I'm an immigrant here. I'm a citizen here now. I'm good, and it's absolutely true. That's right on the money.
Isn't that shocking?
Yeah, that's funny. God, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. That needs to be on a t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, wait, I got a question. Oh, this was a question that was asked to me a while ago on Twitter. How was I treated differently with my mom compared to my dad? Because I'm biracial. But I, and I said that it wasn't I remember she said, I think that, I hope it's not a stupid question. I said, it's not a stupid question, but it's a more complicated question. I think partially because my mom's a lesbian. So, walking around with two moms is very different. Even though one of them was white. But most people, I think what I remember is that my mom was always very, she really wanted me to learn how to take care of myself and to learn how to, for example, how to do my own hair. So she would let me do my own hair all the time when I was a kid. Which obviously I looked crazy for years. And so a lot of people thought that because she was white, she didn't know how to do my hair. And so they thought she was doing it. And so she got a lot of dirty looks in the grocery store for not sort of taking care of her little black kid's hair. But that was not true. And it was actually me doing all the damage. But really, I don't remember that much. We did have a couple when my parents were still married, because they were married first and then they divorced when my mom came out. But there was once in Minnesota, I was born in Minnesota, in a suburb. We had a cross burned on our lawn, a makeshift cross burned on our lawn.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh God.
I was like a baby, and I remember I don't remember it, but my mom told me about it later. And how, how disturbing it was. They just bought the house. They were in their 20s at the time. What do you do? When you realize that these are, it's shocking to me when I think about that. When I think about my parents put in that position to have to say, well, do we move? That just
that's massive.
Terrorism, man.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I was just on that on that subject. I was reading a story about I haven't seen this. Do you know Joy DeGroy? Is it Joy DeGroy? Joy DeGroy? Do you know the story of Joy DeGroy? It's just in relation to the question you were asking, your experience in day-to-day life with your mum.
Yeah.
And it's apparently there's a viral video featuring someone called Joy DeGroy talking about her biracial. Right.
Yes. Go ahead.
Do you want to tell the story?
No, you please.
Okay. It's a biracial sister-in-law using her white skin privilege to question why Joy, and let me start again because I've jumped a bit. It says here, you have most likely seen a viral video featuring Joy DeGroy talking about her biracial sister-in-law using her white skin privilege to question why Joy was receiving undue scrutiny from a cashier. She risks her comfort and her easy transactions with the store to point out this unfairness and ultimately receives support from witnesses and management. So, I mean, that's an example of how you can kind of, but that's, it's exactly what, the question that you were just asked. I mean, it's so nuanced, and the unconscious, that's unconscious bias, this every day, that's white privilege, in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
We talk about a lot of that big stuff, a lot of economic stuff, but that's how it trickles down. That kind of bias, though, is a result of those big choices made.
Yeah. And I mean, it's sort of like, I feel like we might have talked about this last week too, but, and I can't remember if I said this or not. You probably will remember, or they will remember, anyone who's watching. But I was talking about how, I was talking to a white friend about her talking to her friends and family about like their more problematic behavior, or also just about the bigger issues at hand. Like, if she has had experiences with her friends of how to confront her friends and family. And I have to say, I actually don't know, because there are certain issues surrounding race that you can't just ask a Black person to help you out with. Like, I don't know what it would be like to be a white person having to talk to another white person and give them like an adjustment, because I'm not in the room. I mean, I might sometimes be in the room when people say racist shit, but more typically they're going to watch their mouth around me. Right. They might not around my white friends. So like, there are actually some nuances there that like, that's why most of the time people are like, don't just ask a Black person, like how to, like, what do I do about racism?
100%. 100%.
We don't always know. We know how we do it. We know how we have to do it, because we walk through the world always sort of being hyper aware, having this double consciousness basically of, am I being scrutinized because I'm doing something weird, or am I being scrutinized because I'm Black? Right. Because, there's a million reasons, but
there's some great little bits of advice on this before we go, because it articulates it way better than I could about what to do as a white person, but yeah, it is really interesting, because there's no blanket rule, because there are so many different types of people. There are, white, there are overt racists. There are people who are in denial about white privilege. There are people who, so it really depends. I know a couple of friends here, a couple of white guys who have just had a massive falling out over this stuff, because one guy is he's just an aggressive dude, and the other guy, and they're best friends, and they've just had a massive falling out about it. And I know that sometimes it is we talk a lot about education. It's a lack of education. It's a passing down of the children, and that's absolutely true. I think sometimes there's also just another species of human being who just have a complete inability to, and there's no point even approaching. You know what I mean? It just seems like it's like people who kill dolphins. I used to go, what? There's just no. How do you even approach that? But generally speaking, it's really nuanced, and it's I know when my family, we grew up in a really small country town, and I guess because but I just remember having some heated conversations with family members, and family members are the worst, because they push you're right, but the buttons they push are the ones they install. So you're on it's very difficult to kind of have a reasonable conversation with your family, but yeah, it's really nuanced. But generally speaking, I've got to say, like, as far as my experience right now with my friends, it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's
been really cool. Yeah,
I think so too. I've been so like thrilled and impressed with like the fervor and like the energy that I've seen from my friends to like be involved even in this project, or like to educate themselves. I'm seeing people post stuff all the time. Just the difference between 5 years ago and now, that people
Right.
are comfortable saying Black Lives Matter without being afraid that what they're saying
Yeah.
is too radical, too political, whatever.
Yeah.
And understanding that it's not about Black supremacy, it's simply about Black equality and about civil rights.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
I do think
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
so,
That thing of,
yeah, I feel very encouraged. And
Yeah.
I really just hope that people can feel confident enough to go and continue having these conversations, talk with your
Yeah.
friends like Brett and I are talking now, you
Yeah.
know, and even if you're just reciting things you read, which is basically what we're doing, and like
Right.
trying to analyze them and pick them apart, I think that it
Right.
just like increasing your vocabulary is more
Yeah.
important than anything. And checking yourself and like self-reflection is a huge tool here. And then letting your friends be your mirror. You know, that's when I mean, I not every Black person feels the way I do about it, but I'm also a person who says, please God, let's keep talking, like have this, ask me that question if,
Right.
if you have it. Like, and I don't have a problem answering it. Don't just ask any Black person, but if it's me, you can, you know,
Right.
you can
Right.
ask me. But it's and I might not have the answer either, because
Right.
I can
Right.
only speak from my own experience in education. But yeah, I think that it's so, I'm really encouraged.
Yeah. The tricky thing is, of course, you know, like you said, keep having the conversations, keep moving forward, because but I mean, there's a history of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It seems to go that way, you know, and you know, the tendency to slip back and to go, okay, this is normal again, and then something big happening, and it sets off these conversations again. But I mean, you know, it seems like there's a general kind of push towards progression, but sometimes you go, oh my God, we're back to square one. So it's difficult, but the only answer really is to participate and keep
Yep.
talking and be a part of. Yeah.
Well, thanks for chatting again. We did it.
We did it. And we're technic geniuses and we're experts.
I know. It was probably the glasses.
100%.
That's what did it. And thanks
Yeah.
to your neighbor for the phone.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Can you believe it? Can you believe it?
I'm glad that was the problem, and that it wasn't like just the like signals couldn't,
Right.
from where you are and where I am.
Yes. No, it's all worked out for the best. I had my Wi-Fi bumped up about 2 hours ago as well, just in case. I'm on super Wi-Fi now.
Oh my God, you're gonna be going live all the time.
I'm never switching off. It's going to be like the Truman Show.
Stay on now, from now until the end.
Yeah. This is it.
Good. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm so glad we got through it.
We did it.
And I think that was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the things that we covered were basically watch 13th. You have no excuses now, you guys. You should watch it.
Right.
And then we have a couple articles that I can probably post in the description to this video.
Yeah.
So if you can text those to me, I will post them right up. And then
100%. They really articulate what we're talking about in depth, so it's the good stuff.
Yeah. And I still have to watch your documentary.
Yes. You know what? Just quickly, someone sent me a message on Instagram, and I haven't been able to respond because I haven't had a phone. But it's I saw it on my laptop and it wouldn't let me respond. But they were talking about that they found the movie and they watched it and they loved it. And whoever that was, if you're watching, thanks for the message. And I'm so glad you got to see it. It really is great. It was on Amazon, so I'll do some research and find out where to find it. Yeah.
So happy.
Hurrah! You did it.
Okay.
I can't dance.
All right. I'm gonna dance just off the phone now.
Great. Do it.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.